All right, you guys, we are back again with another segment of living and doing business in Africa. This time, we are in one of my favorite countries, Mali. I've been to Mali 3 times. I have the footage of me going to Dogon country and Segu and Mopti and Sabare. So again, Mali is one of my favorite countries. I love Bamako. The women in Mali are absolutely beautiful. So Sister Ayizan, she's taking time out of her morning to come on and just give us the facts of living in Mali, why she went to Mali, what she's doing. Like I said, the purpose of these videos or these segments is to give you guys the truth on repatriation, relocating to African countries. I just think there's not enough um, facts or information on doing that. So let some more people get into the chat room, and then we'll get started. But Sister Ayizan, thank you for coming on to the show. Thank you so much. I really mean that.
Thank you for inviting me. I'd love to share information for anybody who is interested in relocating or just interested in finding out more about traveling here.
Okay, perfect. So where are you originally from in the States, in America?
I was born in St. Louis, Missouri, grew up mostly in Illinois, and I guess I spent most of my working life in New York. So Midwest, East Coast.
Okay. All right. So, tell us about your background. You grew up in St. Louis. Yeah, you went to college. Did you go to college here in America as well, or?
Yes, I spent the first 39 years of my life straight in the United States. I traveled a lot outside of the United States, but I didn't move here until I was 39. I'm 40 now.
Okay.
I went to college in the United States. I got everything done essentially, and then I've been here for a year.
Okay. So you went to college. You were, I guess, in corporate America here in America, or where were you?
Well, I spent some time, my first 4 years I was in corporate America, and then I transitioned to teaching, which is something that I've been doing for about 14 years now. And I love it. And I love it a lot more now that I'm here, to be perfectly honest. I don't think I'll ever be able to teach in the United States again after having the great opportunity to work with West African kids primarily, who are so extremely respectful and so hardworking. So, yeah, I've been teaching for 14 years.
So being a teacher in a classroom setting and being a teacher, were you teaching in St. Louis? I mean, in a classroom setting in Mali, and being a teacher in St. Louis, I guess, or in Missouri, or where did you teach?
I was teaching in New York City.
New York City.
For the most part, yeah.
What's the main difference between teaching kids in Mali and teaching kids in New York City?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think the differences are many because the cultures are so amazingly different. So for example, the United States has a youth worshiping culture, and what that means is that the older you get, the less value you have. Whereas in Mali, it's the exact opposite. I like to think of myself as West African in general. We have an elder worshiping culture, which you may have recognized when you got here, so that when somebody is younger than another person, they show immediate deference to that person. And so in West Africa, as a teacher, you are respected by default. You are shown courtesy. Students are very polite by default. Whereas in the United States, it's kind of the opposite. The majority of my job in the United States was classroom management, and that wasn't about content delivery. That was about trying to deal with poor behavior issues, trying to deal with unmotivated students, etc. So now I don't have to deal with any of that. I have students who come to class with respect first and foremost on their minds, and I can just teach. And so I can focus on, really more than any other time in my life, I can focus on making sure that I maximize the amount of information that they absorb rather than trying to minimize classroom disruption.
Okay, now as far as discipline, now when I was in school, well, a while ago, like when I was in kindergarten and elementary school, I went to a private school, so it was okay for the teachers to paddle us.
Yes.
Now, and I never went to a public school, and from what I hear, kids pretty much get away with anything and everything. Uh, as far as discipline, I mean, if a kid acts out of line in school, in a classroom setting in Mali, what can you do to make sure that kid never does that again?
Um, well, to be perfectly honest, different schools have different levels, I would say, of tolerance towards corporal punishment. But in
Mhm.
general, corporal punishment is very much just a standard way of discipline here in Maui. I teach in a private school where corporal punishment is simply not allowed. But
Okay.
most of my students, most of my students say that that's the main difference between the school that they've been at and the school that I teach at now. So they come with stories that they have been hit with paddles, hit with different forms of switches, sticks, and that's commonplace. So it's not considered child abuse in a lot of the schools here. I taught briefly in Ghana, and it was also commonplace to have corporal punishment in Ghana.
Okay.
So once again, the cultures are completely different. What's considered child abuse in West Africa would have to be really, really, really extreme. But what's considered disrespect towards elders in West Africa is fairly light. If you show any type of disrespect whatsoever, or you're not deferential to somebody older than you, you can get into serious trouble with your parents.
Yeah. Let's talk about pay. Now, I was talking to a brother from, I was assistant a brother, I think either Namibia or Ivory Coast, or no, Ghana, in Ghana. And he mentioned that, say you're a PhD professor here in
Yeah.
America, you're going to get paid at least, I would say, $7,000 a month, close to 100K maybe a year. I mean, maybe. He was saying in Ghana, expect to get maybe, in Accra, expect to get maybe $500 to $600 a month. As far as the big gap in pay from coming from America to Mali, how did that affect you? Or are you getting the same pay rate like you were getting in America?
I'm certainly not getting the same pay rate, but the cost of living here, if you live like a local, is not anything comparable to the cost of living, say, where I was in New York City. The average Malian makes under $5 a day. So if you understand that, then you understand that it's 100% okay to live on a salary of $600 a month. $600 a month is doing fairly well when the average person is making $5 a day, which translates, I'm sorry, less than $5 a day, which translates to less than $150 a day. So I am very comfortably middle class. A lot of Malians would consider somebody who makes my salary to even be rich. And that's very new for me because I grew up in the projects. I grew up poor by American standards. So I feel very privileged here to be making the amount of money that I make. However, it's nothing close to what I was making in New York City.
Okay. Now, making $500, $600 a month in Mali, you're considered rich. What can that buy you? Like, as far as if I wanted to live in Bamako, I wanted to buy, is it possible to buy, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, have a decent car? Like, what can $500, $600 a month in Mali afford you in a city like Bamako?
So let me clarify: $500 to $600 a month is comfortably middle class in Bamako. Comfortably middle class. If you compare that to your standard Malian. Now, most people who immigrate to Mali, however, would not be satisfied with living like a standard Malian. If you want to live like you're accustomed to in the United States, or the way that I was accustomed to in the United States, which I honestly do pretty much, then you can't get by on $500 to $600 a month. You need to be making probably from 1,000 to 1,500, which is still very low. I mean, that only translates to 12,000 to what, $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to have like a 2-bedroom home, I have a 2-bedroom home, 2 bathrooms. Rent is maybe $600 a month.
Okay.
I have made some Facebook posts that allude to the fact that I have a maid. My maid gets paid well above the average pay rate for a maid, and she gets paid that because I choose to pay her that. And she has a maid also, so kind of like I can afford things here that I can afford at home, but in at the same time, want to live a standard Western lifestyle, you cannot do that on $500 to $600 a month. You need at least 1,000 to maybe 1,500. And I don't have a car here, which makes a big difference. I'm not sure how much that would cost, but I just use taxis when I need transportation or I walk.
Mm-hmm.
I did that by choice, not because I can't afford it, but I know people who bought cars for about 4,000 US dollars, and so it's not extravagant, the prices of the car. I think oil costs a lot compared to the United States,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah. Gas is way more expensive in Africa in general than it is in America. I noticed that in Mali and well, pretty much all over Africa. So yeah, oil does cost more.
yeah. So did that answer all the questions? Did I skip something?
No. We're about to get into some more questions. What so let's back up a minute. You're in America,
Mm-hmm.
working in corporate America, doing your thing, and one day you say, "Forget this. I'm going to Africa." Why? What drove you or motivated you to leave America and come to Africa?
Oh, so I had traveled up to the point where I came here to about 18 different countries. And certainly my favorite region to visit is West Africa.
Mm.
My favorite region to visit is West Africa because I feel an ancestral pull to this region, but also I get treated like a human being here by default. And I
Mm.
can't say how nice that is. This is one of the few places in the world where really I just get to experience how it feels to be a woman. And in the United States, and I'm not saying that the United States is blatantly racist or anything like that, but psychologically, there was always a question of whether or not I was being treated a certain way because of my race. And I don't have to worry about that here. And that can tear you down, or at least it was starting to tear at me. It was starting to tear at my psyche a bit to not be ever sure if I was being treated a certain way because of my race. Whereas here in West Africa, I just get treated like a human. And so I consider this year that I've been in Mali to really be my first year being treated like a human for an entire year. And that doesn't mean I've stopped traveling. I've chosen this year to go to Turkey. I've been to Morocco. I've been to Thailand. All of those countries have been extremely welcoming to me. And I haven't once felt any stigma associated with my skin color. The only stigma, for the first time, and maybe I'm happy to be able to say this, the only stigma that I felt was on occasion when I'm wondering, hey, did this person treat me this way because I'm a woman? But that feels great, honestly, to finally be able to ask that question. Because there are many times in the United States where I forgot that I was a woman because I was just being treated like either I was invisible or I don't have feelings.
Mm-hmm. But I would say this, and we talked about this on another podcast, on another show. I feel like, especially Black women in
Yeah.
America, are more masculinized. If that's even a word. More masculine now
Yeah.
than ever. And then when I notice when I go to Africa, women are still feminine.
Oh, they're so beautiful. Like you mentioned, they're so beautiful and graceful and feminine. I noticed that 100%. And I admire that. Uh, I wish that I had more of those characteristics.
I'm on. I'm
But
on.
go ahead.
Let me get you some. Hey, keep. Let me get my son. I got my son with me. Let me grab him something to drink. Let me ask another question, and I'm he's right behind me. Then I'm gonna go get him something to drink real quick. So how was the process as far as moving to Mali from America? How was that
Um,
process?
it was really easy for me because I have spent the last 2 years just cutting down on stuff and I guess breaking my connection to having things. So I came here with 5 suitcases. I sold everything else or gave it away, and it's been easy to come and only have a small amount of stuff. And it's also been very easy to get used to traveling with a small amount of stuff because since I've been here, I've visited 3 or 4 other countries, and I want to continue to visit 3 or 4 other countries per year. So getting here, I think for most people, the hardest thing will be just finding employment that will allow you to be comfortable. And when I say here, I mean Mali specifically, but Africa in general. And getting the employment will make getting a visa much easier also. If you come to Africa without employment, my suggestion would be that you come to Africa as an entrepreneur, that you come ready to set up employment not only for yourself but potentially for other people because the rate of unemployment here is very high amongst the local population. And I am filling a job that requires English, an English speaking person. So I don't feel like I'm taking a Malian's job necessarily, but I wouldn't personally feel comfortable if I were here in a job that could have potentially gone to a Malian, if you know what I'm saying, because their unemployment rate is just really so high.
Okay, so when did you leave in America? I mean, did you have family, kids, husband? And then also too, when you left, what was the reaction of people who you were close with when you told them that you were leaving?
Well, everybody that I know in the United States knows that I love West Africa. So I've been talking about being here for some time, and I have been visiting for so long. Nobody was surprised by the transition. Um, I have extended family. I mean, I have a nuclear family that I left behind in terms of a mom and sisters, but I am unmarried and I'm child free for life if everything goes well. So that also made it much easier for me to just come and transition.
You know, and then we talked about this too before, that it's better to come to Africa as an entrepreneur than looking for a corporate job. Because a lot of times people ask what opportunities are there in Africa from a corporate mindset. But you just confirmed it when we were saying, like, it's better just to come to Africa as an entrepreneur. Time will tell. She didn't finish her answer. What was the question, Time? Somebody in the chat room said you didn't finish your answer to I guess one of the questions. Did you finish your answer to the previous question I asked, or the question before that?
I left one out. Which question is this person referring to?
I don't know. He'll type in and we'll get back to it. Um, what? So you leave America, you come to Africa. What adversity did you face, if any, relocating to a place like Mali?
Well, there's a lot of difficulty with living here. Don't get me wrong. I think the hardest thing to get used to is, to be perfectly honest, in Bamako is the dust. There's just
Right.
dust all
Let me cut you off real quick. I told people this. Mali is the hottest place I've ever been to. Like, especially if you go to northern Mali, like Dogon country, it's hot as hell. And Bamako in winter, you know, because I guess their summer is December, right? That's the summer, right?
Our hot season here is about February, March, April. That's when it gets the hottest. But
Okay.
it's always hot.
I remember in December or end of November, I was there in Bamako. It was like 108.
It's always hot. It's just hot and hotter.
It was crazy. It's the hottest place I've ever been to. But go ahead. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. The hardest thing that I face here because I have asthma is just dealing with the dust. And it's not just dust that consists of sand because Mali is right on the Sahel. It's dust that consists of animal waste, that potentially consists of particles of trash because people have a habit, unfortunately, of throwing trash out on the street rather than putting it in a designated place. That's the hardest part. So I was lucky enough to have access to asthma medication that makes it a little bit easier for me. In addition to that, there are a lot of cultural differences, and some of them are stark. Some of them I feel like I don't even want to say because I don't want to scare anybody away. But at the
No,
same
please,
time,
please, no, please say it. They
yeah.
need to hear it. Please say
Okay,
it.
so I will say, in spite of these cultural differences, that I'm still here and I'm still very happy to be here. And sometimes I'm surprised to just know that these things exist because Malians really are some of the most open, warm, welcoming people that I've met. But let me just say that the starkest cultural difference and the thing that scares me the most is the what I call community justice sometimes. That when somebody is caught stealing, they will run the risk of being killed right there on the spot. So, for example, there are people, close friends of mine have seen people put to death. Just last week, a close friend of mine saw a man steal something that was of relatively low value. Maybe it was a motorcycle. And he was caught by a group of people. He was essentially put into a ring of tires. He was doused with gasoline and he was set on fire and he died.
Oh,
So
jungle justice.
yeah, that's the hardest thing for me to deal with here. The idea that I could see something like that is just really, really sad. But that is the most extreme thing. So I can't say that there's anything worse than that. Of course, that's horrible, but that is the most extreme thing.
Me personally,
Hmm.
I could tolerate that. I mean, I think it's extreme because if somebody's still on a motorbike, yeah, they don't deserve to be murdered. But
Yeah.
some of these, now I don't want to cuss, MFers around here,
Yeah.
that terrorize the community, especially in the black community, I wouldn't mind that happening
Hmm.
if we could get street justice or jungle justice. Um, so, I mean, I could somewhat tolerate that, but again, like you said, I mean, over a motorbike, yeah, that's a little extreme. Okay, so the brother in the chat room said she was talking about the feminine aspects of African women and how her femininity compares.
Right. So I mean, West African women, Malian women specifically, they carry loads on their head by default. You have to be extremely graceful to carry the loads on your head. So you look at the way these women walk; they're beautiful. They are physically beautiful. I'm not going to exaggerate their beauty. There are some countries in Africa where I don't find the people as appealing. I think Senegalese people are the most beautiful personally. Malian people are very attractive. They tend to be tall and thin and agile. And Malian women are raised, to be perfectly honest, Malian women are raised for the most part to provide for and care for their male counterparts. That
Mm-hmm.
means cooking, that means cleaning, that means being deferential. I am not going to say whether or not I agree with that because that's a topic for a different conversation, but that is in stark contrast to American women um, in many ways. So being here allows me to say, hey, you know what, this is just a different way of doing things. And every culture, since I've been to now 21 countries, every culture has its pluses, its minuses, but frankly, every culture is just different. And I appreciate the femininity that I see on the women here. I do not appreciate things like female circumcision,
Yeah, I don't.
which
Yeah,
happens
absolutely.
to most women. But I do appreciate the family structure. I do appreciate the fact that families are intact and that men and women have distinct roles that both are aware of and they feel compelled to carry them out. And it's just interesting to see this group of women, once again, very attractive, very feminine, and ask myself how kind of we got to where we are. And the answer that I come to is not, it's not pretty. I mean, you have to really go through some cataclysmic change to go from this type of culture to where we are in the United States.
So here in America, for what you described, how I guess African women or Malian women are more submissive to their men. That would be considered here in America because of feminism, and I don't, I think that might be for another video, but I'll ask. Misogynistic. Uh, how do you feel about that? Do you think if feminist ideas were to come to a place like Mali, that it would ruin the culture, or do you think it would actually empower the Malian women?
I would love to hear Malian opinions on that.
Okay.
I personally like the way things are here.
Okay.
I personally like the way that I'm treated by men. I
Mm-hmm.
do, however, that they don't expect me to do as much because I'm American. So I kind of am in a win-win situation where I get treated like a woman and I get treated like somebody to be protected by Malian men, but on the other hand, they don't expect much from me in return. And I think that if I were a Malian woman where I was expected to defer at all times, I probably have a different perspective on it. So I'd love to hear from them. From what I hear from Malian women, um, they also agree that I'm treated differently, and in spite of that, they prefer Malian men. The women that I've spoken to, they prefer their own men versus trying to be with a different type of man, such as a Western man.
So you being a Black American woman, and from what I've observed from traveling throughout Africa, African men, me personally, I think they, I don't want to say worship Black American women, but they definitely are show more chivalry towards Black American women. Have you experienced that at all?
I think that for me, I've kind of seen it through the lens of men trying to get visas because that is
Oh. Go
that's
ahead.
what most of them are trying to do. I mean, I
Uh-huh.
have to be honest with myself. There are Malians, there are Senegalese, there are Ghanaians who risk their lives and get on boats to try to go to Europe to escape from here. And so when I am out, I try to be as much non-American as I can. And most of the time I succeed. Most people have no idea that I'm American. I tell them I'm Ghanaian. I tell them I'm Nigerian so that it makes up for the accent. I see that there are many men who are interested in me simply because I'm American, and they will try to make some kind of an extravagant romantic relationship leading to marriage so that they can escape. At the same time, there are wealthier men who don't have that um, motivation, and
Mhm.
so unfortunately, it comes down to if I wanted to date here, I would probably confine myself to wealthier men because at least I wouldn't have to worry about whether or not that person was using me potentially to get to the United States. Because I'm not leaving. I'm not going back. It's not going to happen.
Okay. So do you see yourself marrying and settling down in Mali with the Malian man?
Well, right now I'm involved in a relationship with somebody who's neither American nor Malian, and uh, I'm very happy with him. But I was formerly married to a Senegalese, and
Okay.
I met that Senegalese man in the United States.
Okay.
So I definitely am attracted to West African men. My major concern just is whether or not they're really authentically attracted to me, or if they're more attracted to the idea of leaving, Mali.
Yeah. Because I noticed when I was there, especially in Mali and especially in Kenya, you see these young, handsome, young Malian men with these old white European women
Yeah.
who look like they just are about to enter hospice. And then, no, seriously. And then my friend was like, yeah, they're doing that so they could go, they could try to get a green card to and it's places like Denmark and Scandinavia um, and just Northern European countries. And I just thought it was just like, man, I mean, it's like they didn't have any standards at all. They just wanted that green card. So I completely uh, understand. Now let's talk about. I noticed this when I was in Mali, especially Mali. The Chinese are building a lot in Mali. Do you think that the Malian people are benefiting from that, or do you think the Chinese are just exploiting Mali?
Well, I have asked that question to Malians, and every Malian that I've spoken with is happy about what the Chinese are doing here. So, based on that small sample size, I would have to just communicate what they've said, and I'd have to come to the conclusion that they're not being exploitative, at least um, based on the opinion of the few people that I've spoken to. In general, they're they're living very well here, and it's an interesting contrast to see the Chinese immigrants versus the Malians who live here. But at the same time, there's a solid class of very wealthy Malians who probably make most of these Chinese immigrants look like paupers. So yeah, if I'm just going to give the answer based on what Malians have told me, then they're happy with what Chinese people are doing here.
What as far as just everyday living, like how I know you went to a concert last night.
Yep.
How's just everyday living outside of work? No, for people who are listening, because I've been to Mali, in Bamako. How's the nightlife? How's the city life?
Oh, well, so I just have to correct something that I posted on Facebook. I listed in jest, and I was kind of joking, the top 5 reasons why Bamako is pretty awesome. And I forgot the number 1 reason is the music. Malians are extremely musically gifted. Anybody who likes the blues should check out Malian music to see where the blues came from.
Oh, stop the show. Stop the show. Mali has the best music.
Amazing music.
So what's her name? Sophia Traore, that her name?
Sophia Kone is the one that I like, but Traore is the more internationally known lady. I think Kone sings in the griot tradition that you'll find throughout West Africa, and it's all improvisation, and it's all about ancestor praise. And when you hear this lady, the first time I heard her, I was blown away. I went to see her 2 weekends in a row. She's every Saturday at a club. But in general, Malian music is amazing. You can find it everywhere. And it's, for me, it feeds my spirit. Even though I'm a traditionalist and most Malians are Muslim, I can see the traditional way of life has been allowed to survive and thrive and live through Malian music. And I just love it. So the best thing I think about being here is having access to live Malian music whenever I want it. So that's something you can do every day. If you make effort to find live Malian music, you can do it. And I have to say, again, Malians are extremely musically intelligent. A friend of mine, I'm not exaggerating, a friend of mine said that every Malian he knows can either sing or play some instrument. And you put some Malians together in a room and they can put a band together and they can just start making amazing music. And that seems to be true. They are really musically talented, and their music is just unrivaled in both Africa and the world. I think that they really have amazing music.
And what I would say is what introduced me to Malian music was a documentary on an artist called Car. His name is Boubacar Traore. Yeah, he has a documentary on Netflix called, I think it's called Come Sing With Me. And they kind of just traveled throughout Mali, and he's just singing his songs. And I just thought that was the best. I thought, like I said, Mali has the best music, so I would definitely agree with you on that. Now, as far as getting a job, so how did you secure an actual job in Mali? Did you do it from America, or did you already have it set up? Or did you already have it set up before you went to Mali, or did you have to find one there?
Yeah, I'm not a risk taker. I made sure that I had everything set up before I came. And actually, my destination depended upon me getting this job. If I had gotten a job in Zambia, which I also applied to, I'd be in Zambia. And for me personally, I'm not the type of person who just strikes out on hope. I have to have something solid waiting for me, and I have to have a plan. But I do know a young lady who came here without a job. She just had some friends, and it all worked out for her. She works at the same place that I work at. She's very happy. So I wouldn't dissuade people from doing that, but if that's your risk level, but I will encourage them to please consider, again, if you need a job, the best thing to come here with is the entrepreneurial spirit that allows you to not only create a job for yourself, but potentially other Malians here or West Africans in general, because again, the unemployment rate is so high. There are so many people who need work, and it sounds kind of insane to say I'm showing up in a country with a 30%, 40% unemployment rate, and I'm going to just jump in and look for a job, you know?
Yeah, that would be, yeah. Because I mean, you hear a lot of people, and that's why I'm glad I have you on, and people who've actually made the transition on is, hey, I'm going to move to Africa. I got $100 in my pocket, and the ancestors were going to guide me. How do you feel about that strategy? And nothing against it, because like you said, it works out for some people. But literally, some people with no, absolutely nobody, have $200 in their pocket. I don't know how the hell they're going to afford the ticket, but talking about leaving America and completely relocating to Africa, to a country. How do you feel about that, that strategy?
Well, I am a traditionalist. I practice voodoo, and I know that when you have the ancestors on your side, you really do. So if those people are honestly people who consulted with ancestors and the ancestor told them to do X, Y, and Z, and that's why they're here, then go for it. But if those people are just saying that as a figure of speech and they really don't have a plan, I would not suggest just showing up with that amount of money. I would suggest having a very well thought out plan and most importantly, an entrepreneurial spirit or a secure job that does not take a job away from a local person. Because what we're seeing in South Africa, not that I'm condoning it in any way, but what we see in places like South Africa is that the local population is very resentful of foreigners coming in and getting jobs that they think belong to them. Malians are not like that at all. Malians are very laid back and peaceful and welcoming, and I've never gotten the sense that they resent me being here. But if you come to a place and you take something that could potentially belong to somebody who's already there, then you risk a backlash. And I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that, and I wouldn't advise other people to do that. So I say be a job creator or fill a job that really only somebody from outside can do.
Now, you mentioned you're a traditionalist, so you practice voodoo or traditional African religion?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is what I've noticed. My African Muslim friends, or when I'm in predominantly Muslim countries, they're okay with it. But for some reason, African Christians, they're just spooked out by it. Do you think, have you had that same experience at all?
Not really. I have had the experience that most of the African Christians and African Muslims just think I'm crazy and kind of this is part of my love affair with West Africa and that I don't really know what I'm doing.
Wow.
So they're not spooked out by anything. They just kind of think I'm ignorant and I'm here in love with something that I shouldn't be in love with. But they're very tolerant in spite of that, you know.
Okay.
They see me as somebody who's kind of misled and ignorant, but they would never try to convert me because they know that this is something that I'm doing, and I'm not doing it as a hobby. I'm doing it because I'm doing it. So they're not going to say, you know, hellfire is going to rain down upon me, and the Muslims don't invite me to the mosque. You know, that kind of thing is not happening. I was married to a Senegalese Muslim.
Okay.
And I was married to a Senegalese Muslim whose father is an imam, and there was a bit of tension about that. But I also, you know, we were married at the end of the day, so he accepted it. Versus, I've met Nigerian Christians and Ghanaian Christians in my travels to Ghana or just interacting with people, when I tell them what I do, they just say, "Okay, that's you," and that's just part of your love affair with Africa. Cool.
Was your ex-husband, was he a Murid, or was he what's the other sect in Senegal? Was he a Morid or was he Tijani? Do you know?
My ex-husband kind of tried to steer clear of association with any of those sects because
Okay.
he saw them more as personality cults rather than anything that was authentically related to Islam.
Okay.
And so I don't think that he really played into any of that. But I will say that my ex-husband, like most of the quote unquote Muslims here, was extremely knowledgeable about African indigenous religion. And to be honest, he did a lot of the same stuff that I do. And so at the end of the day, we probably had more in common than I did with somebody who is non-Muslim and non-West African. You know as well as I do that Malian Senegalese, even though they call themselves Muslims, they still know exactly how to communicate with spirit,
Hmm.
and they do it on a regular basis. So there are people throughout Mali and Senegal called marabouts who have divination sessions, and then of course you have people like the Dogon who are still where you can still find some people who are not Muslim, but the Muslims, quote unquote Muslims, here, uh, they have actually given me advice on people that I can go see to do what I need to have done. So I wouldn't I wouldn't try to mislead anybody into thinking that the type of Muslims that you're going to find in West Africa are the type of Muslims that you're going to find in Saudi Arabia or Indonesia. We, and when I say we, I mean West Africans because that's what I consider myself. We consider uh, the Islam here to be a very special kind of Islam.
Right. It's actually African Islam.
Yeah.
Because the Islam that's practiced in, I would say, Indonesia and in Saudi Arabia, I call it Arabism. Um, and then the Islam that's practiced, especially in Senegal by the Moro community, is definitely African. But you brought up the Dogon. So, you got to understand the Dogon country is turning Christian and Islam. They still practice animism. A lot of the Hogan, they're still animists, but it's slowly they're slowly, converting to Islam and Christianity. You go into a lot of the villages, you'll see a mosque and a church in them. And the Hogan told me the ones that still practice animism is like they really don't. How can I put it? They kind of don't respect. I mean, they respect them, but they're kind of disappointed when a Dogon leaves animism and converts to either Christianity or Islam. They said they're very disappointed in that, but their traditions are still rooted in animism. So, like you said, they still have to come back to it. Anyways, regardless. So yeah, that's what the Dogon were saying. But yeah, when I first went to Dogon country back in 2013, I was surprised to see the mosque and the church in Dogon country because I thought they were just straight traditional African religion, but they're slowly converting. Now we talked about this offline. The whole Islam extremist situation that's taken over northern Mali, that's slowly, I guess, creeping to the major cities. Because from what I was told, when the French came in, they were slowly coming into Mopti, and then that's where the French stopped them before they crossed the Niger River. Do you see the extremists being a problem, a bigger problem in Mali? Or do you even see like Mali dividing up into two separate countries anytime soon?
To the best of my knowledge, the government really does not have control over the northern part of the country.
Uh-huh.
When this whole conflict happened, the state of Azawad was declared, and the Tuaregs who led that movement have theoretically not had a formal state recognized, but there's no doubt that the government doesn't have control over that region. So For example, I have been advised not to go beyond the Niger River, period.
Right.
So if I do what you did and go to those places, I would be taking a huge security risk. And if something happens to me, you know, it would be completely expected. I don't think that um, the security situation here is one that I would recommend for anybody who is not a risk taker. If I had a family, if I had children, for example, I'm not sure if I would be here more than a year or two because I don't have children. It's just kind of me. I'm very confident that I can spend at least another year here, maybe 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
But the extremism is definitely creeping south, and I don't know who's spearheading that. I don't know much about the northern part of the country, but I have met some Tuaregs. I have met some Arabs, and everybody that I met is just mellow, and they all know, for example, that I do voodoo, and they don't care at all. So it's very difficult for me to reconcile things like, you know, I hear that in Mopti music is not allowed, and I hear that schools are being shut down. It's hard for me to reconcile that without seeing it with Bamako, where I'm going to a concert until 4 o'clock in the morning, and um, I can wear whatever I want to wear, and I can practice voodoo, and nobody cares. So I've heard that the situation is getting worse, but I haven't seen it.
Like I said, when I was there in November, December of last year, basically it was, you know, we couldn't be on the roads at traveling at night. He was like, look, you know, let's leave a little bit earlier. So at nighttime, we get into our bed and breakfast or go stay at the village. Also, too, it's really hurting tourism in Mali. This
Oh yeah.
this extreme these is extremists. And you know they're saying they've been taking a hit because we had at a restaurant. I forgot what city it was in. It was kind of like maybe 30 or like maybe an hour outside of Jekele, and like he was like, you know, Dynas or Omono. Omono was my Dogon name. He was like Omono. Back in the day when tourism was booming, this entire restaurant used to be packed with tourists.
Mm-hmm.
When we were there, it was just me and him and maybe a couple locals. So I think tourism has taken the bigger impact with it. But you know, when you're dealing with these extreme Islamists in Mali, like I said, it's Arabism. I mean, it's the Tuaregs and the you know the more Arab uh, Muslims that are behind it. Now, who's funding it? That's another question. You know that you know we have to get to the bottom to. Um, what is Mali? Are you going to be in Mali permanently? Do you say you see yourself relocating to any other African country at all? Because I know you said you spent some time in Ghana. What did you like in Mali over Ghana?
I just like the fact that I had a job here. That's why I'm here.
Oh, okay, okay.
I was willing to go anywhere in Africa except for perhaps the DRC, and I happened to get a job here, and I'm very happy here. Before I came here, I visited Burkina Faso, I visited Senegal, so I was familiar with the region. I am somebody who loves to travel, so I don't think I'll stay here permanently. I'll probably stay here maximum 5 years, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to go to a variety of different countries on the continent and just live there for a couple of years and really check them out. For example, I would love, absolutely love, to spend a significant amount of time in Madagascar because Madagascar has the highest percentage of people who practice African indigenous religion. And I'm really interested in spending some time in Botswana and Namibia, which are in the region. So hopefully that will happen. But no, I don't want to be in Mali permanently. It has nothing to do with Mali, it just has to do with the fact that I love to travel.
What about, have you been to Benin yet?
Yes, absolutely. I've been to Benin twice because yes.
Have you been to the Voodoo Festival?
I have not been to the Day of Voodoo because I work.
Oh,
And I
wow.
I can't take the time off, but also because, you know, voodoo has become the biggest source of tourism in Benin, and so um, I have been in voodoo for maybe close to 20 years, and so when I go and I visit a ceremony or a festival, I want it to be authentic. I don't want it to be a tourism experience. You know what I'm saying?
Stop the show. So, this is what I tell people. When I went to the Voodoo Festival in Mwida, I felt like the main festival in Mwida was definitely for the tourists.
Yeah.
But then I went to like the smaller villages. There was a city called Alada, and there was some other cities where I thought it was way more authentic. And then we went to some of the houses of the chiefs. And guys, check out my I call it like a mini documentary I shot. It's called In Search of Voodoo. It's on my page. Check that out. When I was at the houses with where the chiefs stayed, I felt like that was more authentic. But the main festival in Ouida, you kind of tell they're putting on a show for the actual tourists. But I still enjoyed it. I absolutely loved it. Absolutely, I enjoyed it. And like I said, I'm going back again in January. I wish you could come. You know.
Well, you know, voodoo is part of West Africa, and specifically Togo and Benin. You can go there anytime and find voodoo and be a part of it. I like the fact that there's a national holiday. I love it, in fact. Don't get me wrong. I treasure Benin because it's the only African country that stands up and says, this is who we are, this is our tradition, and we're going to celebrate it. So I encourage people to come who are new to voodoo or who have never seen indigenous African religion. I encourage people to go. But for me, being somebody who is actually in voodoo and doesn't want to necessarily have a tourism experience, I don't think I'm missing out on too much by not showing up there.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to see if anybody has any more questions in the chat room. Because I mean, as far as just relocating, you know, your housing situation. How did you room with somebody when you first got there? Or did you pretty much have housing on deck when you relocated to Mali? And how was that process like? Like finding housing, like do they do a credit check and references, or do you pretty much just got to put down on the house you want to live in when you relocated to Mali?
Well, for my situation, my housing was taken care of via my employer, so I had everything all set.
Oh wow, okay.
Here in general is that it's not about credit check because nobody uses credit here, to be honest. I haven't used my credit card a single time in 1 year. And when you pay bills, you pay them in cash. And what happens in most of the West African countries that I'm familiar with is that you show up with 6 months to a year's worth of rent in advance, and that's how you get your solid housing. So it's about whether or not you can pay up front rather than can you pay on an ongoing basis. And that is the way that they determine whether or not you are financially fit to be there. But there are places, I know people who have shown up here without their housing taken care of, and there are message boards you can go to. There are classified websites, the same that you would find in any other major city. And Facebook is great. There are Facebook groups for people who are new to the area where you can find out anything from where to buy your favorite American chocolate to who to hire to drive your car if that's what you want to set up. So you can still take advantage of the internet here the same way that you would take advantage of it in most places. And I would say go for it because there's a lot of great opportunities that you can find on the internet. But at the same time, Mali is really about talking to people and finding out how to get stuff done. So not most, but a lot of the really valuable information that I've come across has just been about being lucky enough to hear it or overhear it from somebody. For example, there was a constitutional reform that happened or almost happened. There was a vote that was going to happen to change the Constitution, and the population was very much against it. And to some extent, I thought we were facing a Burkina Faso type of thing where potentially the government was going to be toppled because the population was so much against it. But the president here essentially listened to the people, and he decided not to have the vote to change the Constitution. And I didn't hear about that on the news. I just heard about it from a friend who I asked about. And I'm not sure what the official report will be, but a lot of information you just get from talking to people who know what they're talking about.
Now, how do you feel about the government in Mali? Like, you know, people have little faith in African government. How do you feel about the Malian government?
I honestly don't know enough about the Malian government to come to any useful opinion or conclusion about the Malian government. I will say that I would love for West Africa to be a stronger place so that the French involvement was minimized,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't really know enough to come to any kind of solid conclusion.
And then a couple more questions. This is what I tell people what I love about Africa. Everything is fresh. The food, you know, there's not a Rouse or a Kroger on every corner with all these food with the preservatives in it. What are your thoughts about the food? I think the food is absolutely delicious because it's fresher.
Mali is a unique place because the soil does not allow for you to have the type of bounty that you would have in a place like Ghana or Cameroon or Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
So you will absolutely notice that it's tougher to find food here. It's not falling off the trees like it is in places like Cameroon. But what you said about having fresh food and preferring it over processed food is 100% true. Probably most of that is due to just the scarcity of processed food. It's not the processed food that is here is not of high quality. So if you want to take care of yourself, the best way to do it is to make sure that you have access to fresh food and to use that. And I'm much healthier since I've been here, probably because of that. I was eating so much processed garbage in the United States, and it tastes like chemicals now because that's really what it is. Whereas here in Mali, I get meals that are made and I can understand every ingredient, and my health has just really improved because of that. So I'm just echoing what you said. Fresh food is the way to go, regardless of where you are. But here is just the obvious, automatic choice to have fresh food.
Hmm. Let me ask, is there anything you want to share? And once again, thank you for coming on. Is there anything else you want to share in closing? I'm going to make sure we cover as much as possible so people can have an idea or a true expectation as far as what to expect when relocating to a place like Mali. I mean, we cover jobs. Oh, are you a citizen? Like, do you have a Malian passport, Malian ID? Have you fully repatriated, as they say?
No, I would only be interested in repatriating if I were going to stay permanently. And my goal is to just move from place to place for a couple years in each place. So I have a work visa, but I do not have any type of citizenship or permanent residency. What I would like to invite people to do with respect to Mali specifically, but West Africa in general, is to visit, letting go of things, and open yourself up to the power of people, because I think that that's what West Africa offers that a place like Spain or Italy does not offer, especially to us, Black
Mm-hmm.
people. It offers an opportunity for you to just connect with people who are genuinely good, open, warm people. And what I found in most what they call poor countries around the world is that poor people are just frankly nicer people. They'll give you the shirt off their back. You show up as a foreigner, they're going to treat you better than they treat their own people. It's the exact opposite of Europe. You show up as a foreigner in Europe and they just look at you like, why are you here and what can you do for me? Versus in West Africa, of course, there's that differential of foreigners having money, and maybe that's part of the reason why they treat you better. But like I said, my main cover here is to pretend like I'm Ghanaian or Nigerian, so nobody thinks I'm rich automatically. They just foreign, and they still give me deferential treatment. I've been put in the front of a line many times by people who just thought I was Ghanaian. And people here are just open and they're warm, and they'll say the same thing 5 times to help you understand it. And they'll say it with a smile. And maybe that's part of that is the fact that they're not so held to time and they're not in a rush. But honestly, the beautiful thing about West Africa is not the stuff. It is the people who live here who are going to treat you like a human being, and not just any human being. They're going to treat you like a human being who is worthy of a warm welcome.
So you're still able to fully, okay, so without being a citizen, can you still buy land in Mali and buy a home without being a legal resident? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I would assume you can, if not legally, then easily, because I know people who have done it who are not citizens. But I'm not going to say 100% because, brother, I have to be honest, money talks. And in countries like this, you can do pretty much whatever you want if you have enough money. So I'm not sure if I'm not sure if they made those purchases legally, but I know that purchases of property and homes have been made.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to share before we close out as far as Mali, and any more tips or insight you want to give as far as relocating to Africa permanently as a Black American?
Yeah, I think that something that I glossed over, which I certainly shouldn't have glossed over, is the importance of being bilingual or potentially trilingual here. I think a lot of people only consider Ghana because Ghana is one of the few countries in the region which was colonized by the French. I was lucky enough to have learned French when I was in high school, and though my French still sucks, I can speak it well enough to get by. And that makes travel in the region much, much easier for me. And I would not suggest that anybody come here unless they're going to put some serious time into learning either the indigenous language, which happens to be Bambara in Mali, or picking up some French. Don't just show up and expect people to speak English, because that is absolutely not going to be the case.
Right. So French is Oh, is that
Echo?
Okay, I think that's better. That's better. Okay. Well, Ayizan, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. How can people reach out to you if they want to contact you? If they have some questions in regards to relocating to Mali. Is there any way they can contact you at all?
1000%. If somebody wants to get in touch with me, they can send me a message on Facebook. My Facebook name is Ayizan, Ayizan Jekele. That's Jekele. I'm the only one because I combined a Haitian and a Nigerian name that probably nobody else has combined. So find me, send me a message, send me a friend request, and we can chat.
Okay, and guys, make sure you go to search for Huru on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and Facebook. I have Africa Personified. I launched that on Instagram, so please go and follow me on Instagram. Search for Huru, like all that good stuff. DynastyMirror.com. Make sure you go there. Make sure you go to searchforhuru.com, and then also go to Amazon.com. Search your name, Dynasty Mirror, and buy a book. Again, Ayizan, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. People in the chat, thank you for coming, joining us today. Till next time, thank you so much. Peace.